What if we took a large hotel conference room, but we made the great outdoors our learning center?
Hmm.
What if we took um, hundreds or thousands of people and we shrunk it down to 12 to 16 people? Could we get at transformation quicker?
So, a couple months ago, I came across the Reaching Beyond podcast and I was introduced to Kyle Depiesse. And I reached out to him. We made this connection, and I found out just an incredible human. I got to meet this amazing man and learned more about what he does with a reaching out experience that he offers to men in terms of finding transformation in their lives. I can't tell you what a big impression he has had on me and just the passion behind it and the great purpose behind his work. I am just so impressed with him. I was so honored when he agreed to be interviewed on my podcast. I cannot wait for you to hear all about what he does. You know, there's always so much space for women in this world in terms of understanding their transformation, digging in a little bit deeper to their feelings, their emotions, their vulnerability, and understanding their triggers and their weaknesses. But there really has not been a great resource for this kind of inner work and finding of inner fulfillment for men. Kyle Depiesse has taken up this gauntlet and he has given an option for men to really dig in and do so in a really unique way. I cannot wait for you to meet him. Please join me in welcoming Kyle Depiesse. Hello and welcome to the Business of Happiness podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy, and today is going to be a spectacular day because we have with us the one and only Kyle Depiesse. I'm so happy you're here, my friend. We fought tooth and nail to make this happen, and it's actually here. Welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm excited to be here, and you're right. There was circumstances that have come up, but we've persevered, and we're here, and we're excited to have this conversation.
So cool. And so for those of you watching on the YouTube channel, you'll notice that Kyle is in a hotel room. He's already warned me that housekeeping might be knocking on the door.
Yeah.
But I just have to say, Kyle, this really speaks to your character and I'm honored. Thank you for making this happen. You're not where you expected to be today.
Yeah.
Life came and happened at you fast and furious the past couple of weeks. So I honor you. Thank you.
Well, thanks. Yeah. And it's just kind of what life is about, right? You get thrown curveballs and it's how you respond. It isn't ideal, but we will, it'll still be great. I'm excited for it.
That's awesome. So one of the big reasons why I invited Kyle on the podcast is because number one, your phenomenal podcast, which I love and listen to you regularly, Reaching Beyond. And I invite all my listeners to check it out as well. But the second part of why I was so excited to talk to you is because you're the creator of the Reaching Beyond experience, which is, and I'm going to let you fill us in a little bit about what it is. But what I find so magical about it is that it's an experience really tailored to men. And as you give us a little bit of background, I think we'll allow our listeners to realize why this is so unique and so needed in this moment in time. So please tell us a little bit about your journey, Kyle, and how you came to create this incredible in-person experience for men.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm an accidental entrepreneur and the market that I serve is also accidental. So there's obviously a story to that. So I will keep it kind of high level. So I'm from Southeast Wisconsin and I got into corporate America right after college. I was in travel wholesale and then I moved up to Minneapolis in 2005 and I got into merchandising at Target Corporate. And then kind of fast forward a little bit, I've been in corporate America for 13 years. And during that ladder climbing experience, I got sent to a lot of leadership retreats and workshops and seminars. And then I took an interest in personal growth and development and a lot of the similar things. You go to big hotel conference rooms and you listen to a speaker and there's 3 days of this and there's hundreds of thousands of people there. And I don't know about you, but I'm introverted. And so I'll be sitting in the back of the room and it's just too easy for me to skip out on afternoon sessions and environments like that because I also get a little bit of ADHD and I can't sit still. And so I'm expected to sit there and kind of listen to these sessions all day. And so I would just end up skipping afternoon sessions and going out for a hike or going to the pool or going to surf or go ski or go golf, because that's how I enjoy and I want to experience life. So that's kind of started to form this idea that, well, maybe I could do something different. I ended up leaving corporate America and I became a high school business teacher. I was ultimately burned out in corporate America, kind of climbing the corporate ladder and being in the race there. And I did high school business teaching for 2 years. And I received the ultimate promotion to a stay-at-home dad in 2017 when my son was born. So this gave me two gifts. Number one, it was a gift of being home with my son. And what an amazing opportunity that was. The other gift was a gift of clarity. I got a chance to say, all right, well, if I wanted to create anything, what do I want to create? And that's when I kind of went back to this idea. What if we took a large hotel conference room, but we made the great outdoors our learning center?
Mm.
What if we took hundreds or thousands of people and we shrunk it down to 12 to 16 people? Could we get at transformation quicker? And so that's just kind of the thing that I started to chase, and I created an experience a couple years around that, and that was the beginning of the Reaching Beyond experience.
And so what is the answer? Can you create transformation quicker in that kind of fully invested outside of your regular home life, work life space? Is that possible to create that transformation in a more, maybe not just quicker, but a more tangible and deep seated way that can
Yeah,
be more sustainable?
I believe you can, and I've seen it happen. I've
Mm.
seen transformation happen in the most unusual of places. I've seen transformation happen in an indoor action sports hub when a guy is stuck in a foam pit. I've seen it happen on the 18th green of Pinehurst in North Carolina. I've
Mm.
seen it happen all over the place because I think there's a lot of people like me who like to learn and learn by experiencing something, learning by doing. Even as a high school business teacher, I taught entrepreneurship, and we could study case studies in a textbook, and I'm sure kids would learn, but they learn a lot faster if they get to experience entrepreneurship by trying to start something, build something, create something, sell something. We just learn faster because I think the learning becomes stickier and it becomes more visceral when you get to experience it. So the short answer is yes, I believe that it does happen when you create a learning environment that is smaller and you learn hands-on.
It's fascinating. It reminds me of I don't know if you've ever read Stephen Kotler's book, The Art of Impossible, but he talks a lot about these elite athletes who create experiences and are able to do things that we originally thought were impossible for human
Mm,
beings to be able to do. And he talks about what we all know about this place called flow, and
mhm.
how in that heightened state you can really understand, learn, absorb more when you're in the state. And some of what you're talking about is making me wonder how many of your participants are finding this state and maybe being able to absorb it more because of that.
Yeah, here's a really good example to, I think, exactly what you just said. And I wrote that book down, The Art of Impossible. I'm gonna find that. Thank you for
Oh, it's
sharing.
a great one. Absolutely. I highly
Yeah.
recommend. Yeah.
So we just did one a couple of months, not even 2 months ago in Scottsdale, Arizona. And there was a guy who, while we were sitting on kind of a large boat that I rented, he was talking about how he's having a hard time letting go of a story that he's told himself in his head for decades. And it had to revolve, for lack of, I don't need to give too much detail, but it revolved around his money mindset.
Mm.
And he said literally in those words, I can't let go of this story. So we kind of talked about it a little bit. And then about an hour later, he went out on the boat to wake surf. And it was first time ever wake surfing. And I had a professional coach out there with him. And the professional coach was telling him, let go of the rope. Like, you're in a position now where you can let go of the rope. And it clicked for him. And it has never clicked for him before. And he was understanding this story in his head, but he couldn't kind of undo that story until he got to literally and viscerally experience he was holding onto a rope that he didn't have to anymore. And I don't know how other way we could have gotten to this outcome other than that just kind of happening organically while he's out wake surfing. It just, there's story after story like that through these experiences that are just, I couldn't plan it. I don't know how to plan it, but it's just worked out incredibly.
Wow. I got chills just when you were telling that story. That's amazing.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I was so excited to talk to you, is because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression is that women open themselves up to these opportunities more readily than men do. And the opportunities are more available to women in that space. And to me, I perceive that men are resistant to the vulnerability that it takes to be there. And so that's why I honor what you're doing. It's so incredible. How do you, sounds crass, but how do you find men who are willing to do this work? And how do you make it available to them so that they're willing to be in that vulnerable place and share that side of them that really needs support?
Yeah. It's such a good question. And let me quick hit reverse. And as I mentioned, there's a story. I never intended this to be guys only, but the very first experience that I did a couple years ago on the North Shore of Minnesota, I kind of just pitched it to my network and said, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I believe. This is what I've got planned for you if you're willing to trust me in this container. And much to my surprise, 10 guys showed up. I did not market it to men, but 10 guys showed up, only guys. And what was obvious to me over the course of that 48 hours was men don't really have a good space just to share what's going on, both personally and professionally. So that's how it started as men only. I never intended it to be that way. But to the question is, how do you get men to raise their hand? It is really hard when you lead with some of the softer skills like that, because I think as men, we have egos and our egos get in the way. We're really good at putting our head down and just working and grinding it out. And when the going gets tough, we just do more of that. But what I found, and here's my secret, and I'm happy to share it, and anyone can take the secret. But when I lead with things like, hey, we're gonna golf Pinehurst, probably one of the best golf courses in the US. We're gonna golf Pinehurst, and then I've set up an experience where we go to the Chip Ganassi Racing Garage, and you'll train with their pit crew team, and you get to pit a race car. If I lead with those exciting adventures, I think more guys are like, oh, that sounds really cool. So I really give them what they want, but they really get what they need, which is to be in a safe container, to talk about things that are going on, and to realize like, hey, you're not the only one who's going through that. They need people just to support them. They need people to be as enthusiastic about their success as their own, about someone else's success as their own. So I just think that when I lead with the exciting bucket list type things, guys raise their hand, and then they realize, oh shoot, it feels really great to be in a tribe of like-minded people who get me and support me, and they want to challenge me, and they're going to encourage me. So that's really kind of how I've done it. That's the secret, and I'm happy to share that, and I want anyone and everyone to take that.
If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you didn't get into business to be miserable. The problem is that people feel that if their business gets busier, if they start becoming more successful, that happiness will eventually set in. But it can actually get worse. This is why I created the Business of Happiness Prosperity Coaching. In this one-on-one coaching, we look at how to redefine success on your terms and re-find the joy and the passion in your dream. Visit me at thebizofhappiness.com and become the happiest business owner you know. So I'm imagining this really uncomfortable moment when guys are doing guy things, which not being a guy, I wouldn't know what those things are, but you're out there in the pit crew and doing manly things.
Yep.
And that uncomfortable moment where you say, all right, guys, let's all join in a circle and talk about our feelings. How do you bridge that? And I say it that way intentionally because I think that's what people think. And so, it's not a natural easy thing to do when you're doing manly things to now sit and talk
No,
about your emotions. So
no.
how do you bridge that gap there and get to the
Y-
deep,
y-
important work?
Yeah. I'll start at the front end. And the front end of this is to get into the experiences, it's application, referral, or invite. So on the front end of who's there, I get a really good understanding of who the guys are and do they fit the mold and do they fit the type? And that type is someone who's willing to come into it and say, like, there's all these things going on in my life. This category right here is kind of half baked and I really need some attention to this, and I'm willing to play all out and step in and be vulnerable and share it. But guys that are more of like, I've got things kind of figured out, I don't really need help, that just isn't really a good fit for what we're doing. But then to kind of go on down the path, I set guys up as we come into these experiences with, I hold a Zoom call digitally, obviously, and we talk about a month before we actually meet in person.
Okay.
And this gives guys a chance to know who else is in the group, what are they doing, what are they working on, how can I help them? And then I want them to set the intention with what am I looking to get out of this? And that really starts to mold and form the group. And then when we're on the at the event doing the things, um when you step into an open door helicopter and you hover over waterfalls and you just overcome some fear and there's this adrenaline thing happening, I'm really detailed about how I structure things after that. Because if guys kind of raise their hand, they step into something, they've never done it before, they're afraid, maybe they're nervous, they're anxious. If they can just overcome that, and then I transition us into like, hey, let's kind of talk about what that was like for you. You get guys that are just more willing to be vulnerable if you can be intentional with how you structure the time together. And so a lot of times I'll just pair guys up into smaller groups. And I think when you start that way, it's easier for guys to share because there's not like 15 guys that they got to stand in front of the group and just talk about what's going on. But they're more likely to do that in front of two or three. And then after they get to know each other by sharing experiences, breaking bread, then they will speak in front of the group towards the back half. So I think it's also how you structure that time together.
Really cool. Have you noticed any commonalities, something that seems to come up over and over again with the
Yeah.
men that you've worked with?
Yeah. And to kind of help paint the picture, there's a lot of guys in the mid to upper 30s into the low to mid 40s. And the common thing that I found, and this is true in my life too, I'm 41 and I'm 20 years removed from college. And I don't know about you, but I'm not really the same person that I was in high school or college. I'd like to think I've maybe matured a little bit. And I want a life that is full and rich and has success in all categories. But I hang out with a lot of the guys from college yet who maybe necessarily don't want the same things out of life. And that's not a judgment statement. But a lot of guys struggle with as they get older and they start businesses and they're doing different things, they have a hard time finding a peer group that understands what they're going through and gets that. And they're also challenging themselves to grow in every category of life as business people, as entrepreneurs, as husbands, fathers, you name it. They want to be good in all of these categories, but they have a hard time finding like-minded people. That is the number one thing I see is we have a hard time finding others that want the same thing in life. But we have these friends that have been around for decades and there's nothing wrong with it, but we just want to be challenged and be understood in other ways too.
Interesting that you bring that up. How important do you think it is to let go of some relationships that maybe don't serve you anymore when you've stepped into this new place, especially in terms of personal development?
Mm. That there's an exhale because that's a tough question.
Yeah.
But it's a great question because I think a lot of people face this and they don't know what to say. I think first it comes down to identifying what do I want in my life and what do I want that life to look like and who is a part of that.
Mm.
And kind of before you look at some of the existing friendships and relationships, um, I think you want to give people the chance to to also do something incredible in their life, as opposed to just making the assumption that they don't. So I think the first thing is kind of inviting other people into living a really rich and fulfilling and full life as well. And then you probably have to understand that some people just may not want to do that. And it's not that I cut people off from my life. It's just that I have to have some boundaries around the time and energy that goes towards that. Because my time, just like yours and just like the listeners, is finite. I don't have all this time to pour into all these different relationships and friendships that perhaps aren't giving me the same life-giving energy back. So it isn't something where I think people just need to go out and cut ties with a lot of people. I think the point, and there's a really great illustration of crabs in a bucket, and maybe you've heard of it, maybe the listener has heard of it, but sometimes when people try and transcend their existing environment and get into another environment that is life-giving and challenging and all the things that we just talked about, there are others who don't want to take that journey with you, and they will try to pull you down. And I think those are the relationships that have to be analyzed. And I think, like with anything, communication and just having, coming from a place of love and compassion and understanding when you have some of those conversations is really important. But that question, that topic is a really difficult one. And to be honest, I don't know that I've perfected it.
Yeah, it's a challenge for all of us to be sure. It's interesting, especially when you're speaking about this transformation. It sometimes ostracizes people,
Hmm.
makes them feel very lonely.
Hmm.
And I think I can completely see that commonality of looking for like-minded, for that tribe that really gets you,
Yeah.
especially when you've transitioned to this new perspective and this new understanding.
Hmm.
When you were speaking earlier about that transformational moment that you saw in that gentleman, um, in that moment in the water.
Hmm.
Has that happened to you before? Have you had a moment like that on any of your trips or maybe before where you've had this kind of visceral understanding of what you were taking in intellectually?
Yes, I think travel has, to me, traveling and experiencing things has this beautiful way of hitting you upside the head with perspective.
Yeah.
And we all live, and we can all get really wrapped up in, things that are going on in our world and how challenging our world might be, and all these things that we have to get to and we have to do. And I just love to get that perspective because a lot of us, and listening to this as well, we're really fortunate with the circumstances that we live in, and travel has always done that for me. It doesn't matter if I'm on the side of the Grand Canyon looking over and down and out across the canyon, or whether I'm scuba diving or whether I'm just taking a walk through the Northwoods where we live and I don't have my phone on, and my because there's no reception anyway. There's just always this beautiful moment of perspective, and things slow down and they come into focus, and it takes me back to things like, why am I doing what I'm doing, and what do I want to accomplish? What is the husband and the father that I want to be, and all of those things. And so I don't know that I've got one thing that is really jumping out at me, but it happens to me all the time when I get outside and I leave my distractions and the phone and stuff like that aside. But that's what I would say.
Yeah, that's really cool. What do you think, Kyle, is your superpower?
I think I've always had this ability to understand and feel certain energy from people. I like to call it kind of discernment. If I can kind of walk into a room, and I like to sit towards the back of the room and just kind of observe and see what's going on. I can kind of tell if someone maybe feels uncomfortable, or if someone is whatever it might be. I think I've always had the ability to discern different energy and different feelings from certain people.
Oh, that's really cool. I'm sure that comes into great purpose on your trips as well,
Yeah.
especially connecting with strangers for the first time.
Yeah, I think part of the magic is putting the right people together at the right time, because anyone can throw a great experience, But what any of the guys that have participated will tell you, it comes down to the people inside the group, inside the container, and having a chance to connect with them. And so I think the ability to pair the right people together, all the way down to who's in a golf foursome together, who's sitting next to who at dinner tables and stuff like that. It's really, I take a lot of pride in being really meticulous about every detail of an experience because I think it matters.
Oh, that's so cool. I think this is such an awesome thing that you do. I really do. And I just
Thank
have this
you.
vision of the power of it and the transformations that can happen beyond it. And so I just
Yeah,
love what you're doing, Kyle. So
thank you.
cool. I would love for my audience to find you. Please, the connections, the links are all in the show notes. But I do want to tell them about this awesome book that you're
Mm.
imminently publishing called
Yeah.
Guys Trip, focusing on what matters most. Give us
Yeah.
an idea of what the crux of the book is.
Yes. And thank you for allowing me to kind of share because it's been something that I've been working on. And quite honestly, I wrote it in only a handful of weeks because I felt like it just kind of really came out of me and it was a really beautiful experience. But yeah, it's called Guys Trip. And I chose that title intentionally because I think when people hear that, it probably invokes a certain perception. And I want to completely shatter that perception when men with integrity get together and they want to move things forward in their life, these really beautiful stories come out of it. So it's Guys Trip, and it's all about stories of transformation that have happened on the experiences that I put together. So I'm really telling stories from some of the guys, and then I throw in a couple of my own. But it goes back to that sentence I said earlier, which is I think transformation happens in the most unusual places.
Mm.
So I'm just sharing stories from the experiences and in my own life.
So cool. So cool. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm dying to read this book because I want to hear some more of these transformation stories. Before we leave today, I'd love to know, well, first of all, what is the challenge that you have in your life right now?
Mm,
What are you facing right now that needs to transform?
mm. Really good question. And I've been trying to crack the code on this problem for a while. So I I really own a job. I don't have a business. I failed the bus test. So if I get run over by a bus when I step outside here, I don't have a business anymore. So I'm trying to figure out how can I create a model for this business that is goes above and beyond me. And I want to impact more people. I only do 4 trips a year coming up in 2022 and beyond. So I want to find a model. I think I've got one on how I can just offer more of these, I think, life changing experiences for guys. And then I think eventually you'll see it move to couples. But I don't want to give too much of it away. But there will be, I think, a dramatic change in what the model looks like in 2022 and beyond, because I'm trying to move past myself as the facilitator, and I'm trying to enroll others, the alumni, to run some as well. So that's the biggest challenge I've been working on. It's been months, and I've just tried to allow it to come through me and get refined again, and then test it. So that's what's going on. That's really keeping me up at night.
Oh, that's exciting. I can hear the passion in your voice. That's really
Thank you.
cool. Really
Yeah.
exciting. And then my final question to you, Kyle, is what is your definition of happiness?
Mm. What I think of is what's really jumping out at me is a few of the sayings that um, different countries have, like La Dolce Vita, like what is the Costa Rica one? Pure Vita, I think. I might be saying that wrong, but that's what's jumping out at me. And I think what happiness kind of means to me is living a rich and full life in all categories. That's what's coming out at me right now. I might change my mind if you ask me that 5 minutes later, but that's what I'm going to go with right now.
I love it. I love it. And what a better way to do so than to get out of your regular environment
Mm,
and get in touch to what with what really matters to you. Yeah,
yes, agree.
really cool. Really cool. Well, thank you, Kyle. I'm so grateful to know you. I'm so excited to be waiting for this book to come out. And I'm so eager for my listeners to look up and find out more about your experiences. And I'm going to be waiting for those other types of experiences as they come along the line. So thank you again.
Well, thank you. And I can't wait to have you on my podcast and we'll flip the tables on you.
Love it. I would be honored. And
Thank
thank you
you.
to all of you as well for joining us on today's episode. And remember that when you feel good, that's when you can do good. Bye bye.